Hello, Mishpacha, it's Courtney, America's Jewish mother. Welcome back to my channel. I am here today with my October reading wrap-up and rankings video. So I ended up reading 9 books in the month of October, which I feel pretty good about. Although I will say a couple of them were short books and 2 of them were poetry collections, but you know what, it's fine. I read 9 books and boom. So anyway, as usual, I'm going to rank these in order from the book that I enjoyed the least to the book that I enjoyed the most. And I have to say, overall, it was a good reading month. I didn't have anything that was lower than a 3-star book. And even though 3-star books I usually just feel kind of meh to okay about, I feel like that's still pretty good overall. So in the number 9 spot was, unfortunately, Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. I did this as a buddy read with Sam at Paper Not Books, and I enjoyed hearing her thoughts about it. And yeah, this was, I think this for me was a good book to buddy read, because otherwise I would have just been like, what's happening? This is going off the rails. I don't know if I'm going to finish this. So, even though it's a short book. So I did find it comical, especially at the beginning, but then it didn't really seem to build to anything as far as I'm concerned, even though I do think it has interesting things to say about religion and the uses of religion and how we create religious mythology and texts and things of that sort. So 3 stars. I know a lot of people enjoy Vonnegut. I might still try his other book, Slaughterhouse-Five, which everyone assures me is the best Vonnegut. So I probably will try that at some point, but if I don't like that, I think we're going to be done. So that was number 9, 3 stars. So number 8 was a short story collection that I actually started in September, because this was my pick for September for my own Arab American literature project, where every month I read one book written by an Arab American writer. But I didn't finish it in September, I finished it in October. So that was Alligator and Other Stories by Dima Alzayat. Dima Alzayat is a Syrian American writer, and the short story collection was published not that long ago, I think maybe in 2019, 2020, something like that. And I gave it 3 stars. It had 2 stories in it that I really liked a lot, and that I found very moving. Both of those had to do with kind of familial relationships. But then thematically, the whole collection together didn't really seem to cohere for me. I did think the title story, Alligator, was interesting because it uses this like mixed media format. Although I also found it confusing for that reason. But yeah, so like with a lot of short story collections, there were some stories I liked here, and most of them I felt okay to meh about. So 3 stars. At number 7 was Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. So I did this as a buddy read with Cynthia at Book Whimsy, and I don't think I could have chosen a better person to buddy read this book with if I had tried, because it's about the French Revolution, and Cynthia knows all about that particular time period because she is a historian. So, yeah, so she was a great person to buddy read this book with, because she had a lot of insight into the time period and the context and Dickens' take on it as a British person, and what he got right and what he maybe didn't get so right, etc., etc. So that was really good. And so I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. The first half of it is very slow and plotting, because we kind of are doing all of this character setup, and we're meeting all of these people, and honestly, not a lot happens until the French Revolution kicks off, which is a little bit after the 50% mark. And at that point, the book starts to build steam and momentum, and things start happening, and it gets a lot more exciting. Second half of it I was definitely entertained. The first half of it, I just kind of spent being like, okay, when is the French Revolution happening? So for that reason, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Number 6 was the poetry collection that I read for my Arab American literature project for this month, October, which is Egyptian Compass by Pauline Kaldas. Pauline Kaldas is an Egyptian American writer, as you could probably tell by the title of his volume. And I like this overall. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. As with a lot of poetry collections, some of them I liked more than others, but I did mark one that I particularly liked to read you. So this is called Garbage City. Mostly it's the little girls in dirt-spotted frilly dresses, and mostly it's the older girls eager to shake your hand on the mat sitting for Sunday school. To inspire cleanliness, a prize is given. But the intoxication of the city's garbage clings, and metro passengers step back, sorting through to find a shirt, salvage thrown into a barrel. Later, a can could be recycled, another barrel for the pig's food. If I throw away the green canvas bag with a broken strap, will someone fix it? Where is the dead sidewalk cat, fly-eaten intestines, odor escaping? Flattened tin, to create walls, home, a section for a cart or straw-woven sack, another smaller for the family. My husband and I argue. When people visit, he wants to show them everything. I am defensive. Embrace this too? Shake a tree, volcanic upsurge of flies. I'd like to tuck this garbage city under, pretend my garbage dies in an incinerator, not return to life in Mustafa's home. My garbage man, elf-like in his green galabia, rocking head and crooked, smiling. Alright, sorry, I messed up the last word, but whatever. Anyway, so that maybe gives you char. She's scratching herself, so collar's jangling. Anyway, so maybe that gives you some idea of the poems in here. So some of them are set in the United States and some of them are set in Egypt. So yeah, if you like poetry, I would recommend it. 3.5 stars. That was my number 6 book for the month. Number 5 was David Heska Wanbli Weiden's novel Winter Counts. I gave this 3.75 stars. I would definitely recommend it if you like thrillers or books about, men who sort of are on the wrong side of the law and they're like vigilantes who take justice into their own hands and stuff like that. This is definitely a book for you if you like that kind of stuff. It concerns Virgil, wounded horse, who lives on a reservation in South Dakota, and his nephew Nathan gets drawn into a bunch of drug stuff that's going on and gets set up for a crime that he didn't commit, and then Virgil has to figure out who's been bringing drugs onto the reservation, etc., etc. And it definitely builds momentum as it goes along, and certainly as we sort of race toward the conclusion, it gets more and more exciting. And I definitely liked it overall. I would read something else by David Heska Wanbli Weiden, and I think he does a really good job of kind of capturing the atmosphere of the reservation and the feelings of people there. So yeah, I really like this overall. 3.75 stars. At number 4 was Fatima Farheen Mirza's A Place for Us, which I also gave 3.75 stars. This book was gifted to me by Lindsay in our holiday book exchange last year, and since our holiday book exchange is forthcoming in a few weeks, I'm trying to read the last remaining books from that I still haven't read yet. So I liked this overall. I think for the first 80% of it, I felt like it definitely could have used an editor. I had some issues with it, including the fact that I felt like the characters of Amar and Hadia and the mother Layla all sounded too similar to me in terms of their voices and perspectives. And there are a lot of time jumps back and forth, and it's just a pet peeve for me that I don't love it when authors do that unless there's a good reason for you to do it that way. And while I kind of see why it was done here, I think maybe it didn't need to be done quite so much. But the last section of this book, the last like 20% or so that's told from the father's perspective in first person, that made me cry more than once. So it got bonus points for that. So I liked this overall. Maybe was not as blown away by it as some other people have been, but I did like it. I think if you're someone who likes really emotionally charged books, you would probably like this. Also, if you're someone who is invested in sort of like lyrical, beautiful writing, you would probably also like this book. So this was my 4th favorite read of the month. Then at number 3 was Emily Austen's novel, Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, which I gave 4 stars. And for me, this was a compulsively readable, or in my case, listenable, because I listened to it as an audiobook, read, and it centers around this main character named Gilda, who is an atheist lesbian with depression and anxiety, who somehow manages to start working at a Catholic church where she has to pretend to be A, Catholic, and B, straight. And sort of comedy ensues from there. So I quite liked it, and I found it funny, but it's also a very dark book. And I think if you're someone who has to have the protagonist be a very likable character, you might not get on with this book. In some ways, I feel like it most reminded me of Queenie by Candace Carty-Williams. So like if you didn't like Queenie or think she was a likable character, then you're probably not going to like Gilda. But I liked Gilda. She reminded me a lot of some people that I know. So I think especially if you are a queer person with anxiety or depression, you would maybe especially relate to this book. So I quite liked it and gave it 4 stars, but it's definitely not going to be a book that's for everybody. So that was my 3rd favorite read of the month. My 2nd favorite read of the month was ShallCross, which is a poetry collection by C.D. Wright. This book was a fever dream. I have no idea what happened in it, but it was awesome. And I already have in my possession a 2nd collection of C.D. Wright's called Cooling Time, an American Poetry Vigil, which is kind of a provocative title, so I'm interested to see what the deal is with that. Maybe I can work it into December, who knows. So yeah, I like this a lot, would recommend it if you read and enjoy poetry regularly. And then my favorite read of the month was W.G. Sebald's novel Austerlitz, which I gave 5 stars. I did this as a group buddy read with Brian at Bookish, Sina from Beating Around the Books, and Mark Nash. And they were great people to buddy read this with. Brian has read several other of Sebald's novels, and so he had a lot of insight into this. And I think Mark has also read at least a couple other of Sebald's novels too. So yeah, I love the conversations with them about this book. This is not a book where a lot of stuff happens. This is a book that's about memory and how we remember things and how stories get passed on in the future, and how we tell stories about the past, etc., etc. So for that reason, I feel like it's kind of philosophical. So if you like books that are more sort of philosophical, you will probably like this. If you need books that have a lot of character development or plot to them, you will maybe not like it as much. But I quite liked it. I found it a brilliant book, but it's definitely one that you have to be willing to kind of like take your time with and sit with. It's not a difficult book to read, but there's a lot in here to unpack. And so I appreciated that about it. And this is the first book by Sebald that I've ever read, but I definitely want to read more of his stuff if this is any indication of what it is like. So yes, 5 stars. This was the best book that I read this month. So that is everything that I read in the month of October. So thank you for watching this. If you have thoughts about any of these books, I would love to hear that. Let me know what books you read and enjoyed in October. So I hope everyone is staying healthy and well. I hope you're all doing good reading whatever you're reading. And until next time, what did Killy to call you, mother?